Committee meeting of May 27th, 2014.
Great, I'll call the meeting to order. I'm Jennifer West of City Council, and Nora Davis is here as well. And first, I'd like to take any public comment. Anyone who has anything they would like to say to address the Transportation Committee this morning?
I have a public comment.
Sure.
I finally realized there's no street sign where the road comes from the towers to Powell Street. There's no, I don't even know what the name of the street is. So
It's a private road, right? It's
Yes,
not actually...
which one? The one off of Powell Street or
Yeah,
the one off of
Powell.
Frontage? It's a private road.
But it doesn't have a name?
No, we've never named it.
Uh-huh.
So we should put something there so people can identify.
Private.
I know, well, like Spur Alley has a sign and name, so maybe.
Interesting. Well, I wonder if we could talk to the owners of
That's
the
a thought.
property and see. Yeah, I've always been confused by that myself because I wasn't clear what the name of that street was.
Okay.
Everything's Powell on the address there. Thank you.
Jennifer, I have a request to move item C up to the top of the agenda.
Okay. To accommodate folks who are here?
That's right.
Great. Yes, Buzz?
Public comment?
Yes.
When we get to the eBay study, e-bike study, I'd like to call to the attention of the committee that they've ignored the Watergate Peninsula. None of the studies show any transportation there at all. It amounts to 20% of the Emeryville population,
Yeah.
and the largest single concentration of office space anywhere in Emeryville.
Thank you.
And I think that needs to be addressed.
Okay. And we can talk about that further when we get there. Thanks. Any other public comment, or you're here for another agenda item? Great. Do you have public comment?
No, I'm just here to listen.
Great. Thanks for coming. All right, we'll move on to our action items, and let's consider first item 3C, which is consider prohibiting overnight commercial truck parking on Christie Avenue between 59th and 64th Streets.
Thank you. Yes, I brought this attention to Ken, and he was kind enough to put it on the agenda today. So,
And your name is?
oh, I'm sorry. My name is Kyle, and this
Kyle.
is Aaron.
Hi, Aaron.
We're both residents over at Christie Avenue.
Okay.
So there's been some trucks that have been parking on the street for about a year now.
Talking about big trucks?
Big Penske trucks, actually, white trucks. You guys have seen them.
They're qualified as a bobtail.
Right.
And so I've actually confronted the business that parks them there, and they haven't really responded to the trucks.
What business is that?
They're in a furniture distribution business over in Cleveland. And I don't know much about them other than that they want to park the trucks on Christie because it's safer, and they've told me they've had a member break something of them. So they're parking in front of our unit.
Left open,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so it's pretty much all day after work, and then all weekends, Saturday and Sunday.
So outside of business hours, basically.
Outside of business hours, it doesn't really impede too much on the parking, but they're unsightly. I don't think it's really appropriate because Christie is primarily residential now. So that's pretty much the gist of the issue.
Great, well, I appreciate you bringing it to our attention. And what is the police response to that? It's not illegal for them to park there because there are no signs prohibiting that at the
Yes,
time.
it's completely legal to park there, as long as it's not over 72 hours in the week every day.
Right.
But if they're bobtail, how do you control bobtail?
Wait. Bobtails would be illegal in our residential triangle because of the weight that we have on.
So we have different allowance for parking in that residential area, but this area hasn't been marked.
Yes,
that.
the council actually took action to restrict or prohibit commercial truck parking in the triangle area by weight. Actually, besides parking, the actual driving through traversing.
And those are on signs posted?
Yes, those are
So
signs.
no trucks over?
Yes.
Jennifer, I would like to suggest that we contact, if you have the contact information for the company that's doing this, we contact the owners and tell them this is going to be on the Transportation Committee agenda next month as an action item. And then we're giving them fair warning, they can come and tell their side of the story. But you make, we really don't need to be parking West Oakland trucks in town. We used to have them lined up and down Park Avenue, the big truck, big rigs. So let's
Do you
take
do you
that
have
action.
contact information for the?
You know, I can get it, I see
Yeah.
those guys frequently
Yeah.
now, so.
Chief James, do you have a card for this young fella?
He has my email already.
Oh, good.
And is it one truck or is it more than one truck?
It's a couple,
A couple
it's a
trucks.
couple, and there's some campers too, that, you know, they're unrelated, you know.
So not that business.
Yeah.
So that's really the question, is it, you know, is it one organization or would this require obviously a more blanket change?
Well, and of course, the other thing is, it is becoming more and more of a residential area, and you don't want the big trucks parking in there.
Yeah,
Yeah, that new building's going up real soon.
that's right, yeah.
So
Got a lot
thank
of
you for
construction.
bringing it to our attention, and it will be on the agenda next month.
Okay, great. Did you have any further comment on that, Chief?
No, I was just gonna look at the calendar because
Uh-huh.
when,
End of June. What is that, June?
So if-
July 3rd will be the next meeting.
So if I could ask, what's the wording on the sign that we're looking for?
No commercial truck parking over X weight.
The same thing we did in the triangle.
I think we've also done it on the peninsula.
We've been chasing trucks around.
They actually told us that they used to park outside of Watergate because they live there, and that the city added no truck parking, so now they're on Christie Avenue. So they're just finding new places. to
Yeah.
park.
So is it June, I think our next meeting's the end of June, right?
No, it's July 3rd.
Did we change it from June to July?
This is, well, no, you're right, I'm sorry. I was
Maybe
looking
maybe
at,
public safety
I
or
was
something
thinking
else.
public safety. You're all right, it is June 24th.
June 24th. Okay.
We hope to see you here.
Yes, great, we'll do that. Thank you for taking the time.
Okay.
Thanks for that. We'll move on then to item 3A, which is to consider the white and green zones at the west end of 62nd Street in front of the post office.
My, I have, here's pictures here, and both council members have a picture. My parking enforcement employees have identified a couple problems at the west end of 62nd Street. One is on the north side of the street, where we have conflicting signs.
Right.
Permit parking only and 2-hour parking. So I think
And we had said we couldn't do any 2-hour parking in a permit area.
we have gone to the idea of no 2-hour parking in a permit area just for enforcement issues.
Right.
So, I think just removal of one of the signs would be.
So which one are we removing? The 2-hour parking?
Yeah, this is
I think
still,
so.
the permit is still active,
Okay.
And that means no green paint there too.
yes,
Shouldn't have green paint.
yes.
Right, so.
But I don't think there is any green paint there.
Okay. Can't tell from the,
Okay, so on this one, this is necessary, not necessarily as waiting for the city council, I think we can act on.
yeah, I think we just act on this because this was, we already have that in our policy that the permit area doesn't have the 2-hour parking.
The second one, which is on now the south side of that street, directly across the street in front of the post office, we have a white zone. White zones are passenger loading and unloading at that point,
Not
so
really necessary there.
I would say that I would suggest that we put a green zone with a very limited parking time, because the idea is for somebody to pull up to the post office, jump out, do their post office business and get out. I don't know why we would have put a white zone. There's,
I would agree with that, and there's not a ramp on the site either in terms of, handicap
At the
access.
corner.
Yeah.
At the corner there is, but not here. That would make sense to me, you're thinking like 24 minutes, although sometimes those lines are kind of long inside.
well,
Yeah,
a half hour or,
Wouldn't it be whatever this other green zone is?
Yeah,
well, I'm not sure what this green zone is.
that could be a 2-hour.
That could be a 2-hour green zone since we had the white zone.
That's too long. That whole stretch there should be for in and out to the post office.
Although there is also a post office parking lot that's separate.
Well, that's how gated, I
No,
think
no.
the public parking lot, right.
But yeah, I'm fine with the green zone instead of white, that would make a lot more sense.
So
Everything
that's,
else, so.
paint the entire white area green, is what we're
Yeah.
suggesting.
How many
Yeah.
minutes for the green?
30 minutes.
30 minutes?
They get sometimes backed up there. With
Yeah.
only one clerk.
Well, and
It's not likely that.
it's not likely somebody's gonna get cited because it takes the parking enforcement people a little bit more than 30 minutes to get through some of their markings.
Okay.
So is the entire white zone becoming green? So we're suggesting. On this one, we want to wait for city council action, I presume, or?
Yeah, we should just, it's not a big hurry, I would think. If that's all right. I assume this is white all the way back to where it looks like the bike parking is. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. So this is enough room for 2 or 3 cars perhaps?
Yes, at least.
I mean, it could happen earlier too, but might as well send it to council. Let them know. All right? Nothing further on that item. Let's go to the discussion of the e-bots, the Emeryville Berkeley Open Transit Study.
So, I'm Diana Kina, and I'm the city project manager for the Emeryville Berkeley Open Transit Study. We're to the point where we have taken input on what trips people make and want to make, and destinations, origins, problems, ideas, things like that. And our consultants have devised some options. And first thing I need to say about the options is we said, where's the peninsula? And they said, well, we assume that the Emeryville round will continue to operate. 2 of the things that we're suggesting do overlap some of the Emeryville round, so that we'd have to work out how that happens. But we would definitely assume that the Watergate Express continues to operate. And since then, we've heard from some people out there that, well, we want to be able to get to different parts of Emeryville, not just to BART. So that's an input that we're taking back. And also, the maps need to show these things, because everybody's saying, where's there's nothing out there. They don't see it on the maps. So, what else did I want to say? So looking at what we've come up with, the first thing we've come up with that we're showing people is a set of AC Transit improvements that AC Transit staff has developed as a result of a comprehensive operations analysis and is planning to present to their board for adoption as something they could do if they get more money. And it includes a lot of extensions into Emeryville focused on the public market because it's right across the bike path from the bridge from Amtrak. So it includes, and this map doesn't show the existing routes. We're just we've got too much to read, so we're just showing the changes. So it includes Berkeley 49 extending to there, a new 13 going up Stanford and then Alcatraz and on to Rockridge. The 12 going directly by the triangle neighborhood between downtown Berkeley and West Oakland BART, straightening out the 26 to West Oakland BART. Those are the main ones that affect Emeryville, I think. So we were taking input on this. This is kind of a sneak preview. AC Transit is going to go out and do workshops on it. It might get it revised before they do that. So that's the first bit of information, and I'm going to ask y'all when I finish what you think about all this.
And where does 26 start?
The 26 would start at the public market and go up 65th and down Hollis, so it stops also at Hollis on the other side of the Amtrak station, and then down to 40th and Mandela. So right now it goes down Peralta, which sort of picks up more people there, but this would zip down to West Oakland. Because there's not much development there yet. Any other clarifying questions about
There's a
this?
whole
Okay. And then I'm going to ask you what you think of all these. So this is the main thing that our consultants have done. They've developed a set of connectors, each having a BART on 2 ends and then going north-south in the middle. And we've asked people, so there's one for Berkeley, one for Emeryville, one for Oakland. So we've asked people if the Berkeley one should go to North Berkeley BART downtown. Most people said North Berkeley because it doesn't duplicate buses that go up University. And then from there, it would go down 6th and 7th, 7th and 6th, and up to MacArthur. And then the Emeryville one is similar to the Emeryville round to routes, the Hollis and the Shell Mound, except that it goes on to the Ashland BART station at the other end. And then in West Oakland, MacArthur BART down Mandela to West Oakland BART, and then a choice of 3rd or 7th over to Jack London Square. And because there's so many shuttles now that go from MacArthur up to the hospitals, I think the idea is if we wanted them to join in, that and consolidate, that could extend to the hospitals. So those are what the consultants were floating and studying. And then at the first workshop, somebody came up with the idea of overlapping. So there's one that goes from like North Berkeley BART down through Berkeley and Shell Mound over to MacArthur, and another one that goes from Ashby down Hollis and over to West Oakland BART and Jack London Square. And then at the Planning Commission, somebody suggested the same routes but different, so that there's one that goes north-south. The consultants and AC Transit and the Technical Advisory Committee thought there wasn't a lot of demand for just going all the way from West Oakland to North Berkeley, but we had a lot of people say, oh yes, we want to. So somebody suggested a north-south and a sort of a north-south that goes from like Jack London and West Oakland up and to North Berkeley, and then one in the middle that goes from Ashby to Shell Mound to MacArthur. So there's different ways this could all be configured. And then they did look at also modes, what kind of bus or streetcar, and they sort of just defined some vehicle types. And one is the way Emeryville used to be. Now they're moving more toward transit buses, the little shuttle buses that aren't as big and don't last as long and take longer to load the disabled and strollers and such. And then there's the transit buses that AC Transit uses. And then the enhanced bus, the bus is basically the same, but you can do things to the street like curb extensions for level boarding and signal priority and possibly even on-street fare collection, which would speed it up. And then the streetcar, of course, requires the capital investment of the streetcar tracks, but that can be financed over 30 years, and it has been shown, along with a bunch of other efforts, to develop the kind of development people want. And and they did a bunch of ridership projections as well as cost projections, and comparing ridership to cost. This will be in the final report. It starts to look like by 20 years from now, the Emeryville routes, the streetcar might make sense. The cost versus the number of riders starts to even out. And then we also were asking people at the workshops about what kinds of features they wanted to have, what service features, and I don't think I put this in the packet. It's in the written part. What service features they want to have, vehicle frequency, time transfers. Time transfers are hard to do because who has to wait to transfer.
Time transfer just means they arrive at the same time so that there's a more fluid connection, right?
Except if one doesn't, the other has to wait.
Oh, I see. That's the way.
They work well at the ends of the routes. Signal priority, curb extensions, things that speed up the vehicles. Safety and security, of course, is real important, especially in West Oakland. Visibility, cameras, lighting. Stop improvements, a lot of requests for shelters. Real-time arrival info, benches, trash bins, and cleanliness. Those were the things people really wanted. Wi-Fi they didn't think was important because it's kind of a short haul route, a couple people said. And whatever we do, there's going to be a combination of federal, state, and local funding sources. And so we have to think about what local funding sources could be. And it depends who steps up and wants to do what. But there's the possibility of a larger improvement district of some sort. There's a possibility of 2 or 3 improvement districts. So the whole improvement district model, expanding that is a possibility. There's also parcel taxes. There's a new option called a local gas tax, and developer fees, of course, and what about fares? At the Emeryville round, at the TMA, the people said, we don't like the idea of collecting cash fares. It slows things down, we have to have insurance, blah, blah. Maybe if it were on-street fare collection with a Clipper card or something like that, maybe we could do it. So what I want to ask you is, and I don't know if you want to do this one at a time or just chime in whatever you want to talk about. What do you think of the AC transit routes? What do you think of the various configurations of the connectors, the ones the consultants first came up with one for each city, or the ones that overlap, north middle and south middle, or the ones that are kind of like a cent sign with a north-south and then a C in the middle? Whoops, that's I didn't write that down, that just came up. And which modes? A lot of what people have been saying, of course, is that we would probably phase things in. So you go from one mode up to the next over time. So, but any comments about that? And what kind of features are most important? And what local funding sources are worth considering? So up to you.
Great. Thank you. I have some thoughts, but I wonder if other people want to speak in terms of public and, yeah, go ahead, Betsy, please.
Hi. Well, first I want to start by saying that one of the things that is sort of a little scary to me about the community meetings is that they're almost entirely comprised of people from planning commissions, from AC Transit, from BART unions, AC Transit unions, and there's very, very few people from the general public there. And quite a few people apparently filled out the survey. But my concerns about this are probably come out of attending all the meetings of the TMA and the city council and, all of these very things. And I think that a lot of people don't really understand how things are funded. And so you can answer a questionnaire that says, well, I want to go from here to here or whatever, but if you don't really sort of understand the whole thing, I'm not really sure exactly how informed it is. And I don't think people on the peninsula in general, with the exception of Buzz and I, are the only two people I've seen at those meetings. And I have not proposed these other problems to people at Watergate because I don't want to get people all upset about something that isn't necessarily a problem. The fact, it concerns me that as Buzz said and as Diana alluded to, the peninsula is not shown, doesn't show any transportation on these maps. Most of the Emeryville service that's currently in Emeryville, that's served by the Emeryville, has an overlap that is shown here as proposed service. So if they're continuing the existing out here, that would also be proposed service and should also be on the map. But it isn't. And the reason I think it isn't is because one of the maps refers to they're continuing to have regular Emeryville service. So instead of drawing a line out here, as they've drawn lines all over the place in 3 different cities, they just have a little box that says they'll maintain the regular Emeryville service. However, 2 of the maps say that they'll retain the Emeryville Express, the Watergate Express. Well, the Watergate Express is fabulous for the towers and for people who are going to BART. But for a lot of people, like I use it mostly to go to Target, to Bay Street, to the public market, to the senior center. And I also use it to go to MacArthur. So I do use it to go to MacArthur sometimes to take BART, sometimes to get other shuttles. So I think that it needs to be shown on here. In addition to that, at the community meeting that I went to, I talked to several people who were doing the presentation. I think some of them were from the consultants. And when I would ask them about it, they just said, oh, don't worry about it, that's going to be the existing service. But when you start, and I know some of the people involved in this don't think that the Emeryville should continue going out here. They think that it should be AC Transit going out here, which is sort of a whole other ball of wax. And Charlie said that AC Transit had suggested that the 13 come out. Well, the 13 is a proposed route that goes to Ashby, but it doesn't go to any place in Emeryville. The Ashby service only has it only goes to Richmond. The MacArthur station, it's a connector station. It has 3 different lines that go through MacArthur. Plus it links up with all of the shuttles, all of the local shuttles. But it doesn't go anywhere in Emeryville, and it's a proposed thing. So that to me would not, and it's one stop further away from San Francisco. So to me, that would not be a really ideal solution. I think we should remain a part of the Emeryville service. We're a quarter of the population. If the Emeryville continues, I think it should be shown on the map. And I've said this before, but I wanted to say it and said it to you. So I just would like to encourage you to show that the local Emeryville service will continue to go out there.
I'd like to respond to that, which is just why is Emery-Go-Round service not folded into this entire analysis? How can we assume that Emery-Go-Round isn't going to change? We're also considering long-term funding options there. It seems like everything should be on the table, and the whole idea was to have a comprehensive study. I'm a little bit concerned that we're making assumptions here that are not reliable.
Most of these routes also include the Emeryville routes, but because they're existing and proposed, they're on the map. That's why, as an existing, and if it is proposed, it should also be here, because that's what they've done with all the other Emeryville routes. But that was the other thing, the final point that I wanted to make, because with the PBID coming up for the local Emeryville, now that you're turning it into this thing that involves 3 different cities, I'm not sure how that's going to work.
Marcy?
I just wonder if there's like 2 different sort of populations or purposes for bus use from the peninsula. There's the people that work at the towers and go back and forth to BART, and they don't necessarily want to, they may, but they probably don't want to go to Target or some of the other places that the residents of Watergate may want to go to. So I just wonder if that's come up in the conversations.
So they have the express, and a lot of people at Watergate also take the express because they use it for commuting back and forth to the city.
Yeah.
So they're basically 2 different populations, and they are 2 different.
The express of Emeryville Express.
The Emeryville Express, it does go to Watergate, and a lot of people at Watergate do take it.
The towers,
Currently, it's just during rush hour.
Yeah, but I remember hearing when Emeryville was reluctant to reinstate the service down there, that people weren't just using it to go back and forth to BART. They were doing all these other things with it, and it just seems like that the different uses.
But there are 2 different bus lines.
So what's the other?
One is the Shell-Mound Powell is a thing, and it's a local bus that goes to all the different places. It goes down to 65th, past Pacific Park Plaza, and then it comes down to Watergate, and then goes back up to the shopping centers.
And so I guess what I'm just wondering is, so those 2 different purposes, are we only talking about leaving the Emeryville down there and not using
Well,
any
the
other?
express only runs during rush hour. That's the one that serves most of the office workers and the commuters from Watergate.
Yeah.
So the systems don't really overlap. They provide specific services at specific time.
And they're usually really full, so it's not as though they're running a lot of empty buses. They're always full one direction. If they're coming from BART in the morning, they're full, and then they pick up people at Watergate going back, so that they do have some, so it isn't, I think somebody calls it a deadhead route. It does pick riders up going the other direction. And then the reverse is true at night. The buses, they're really full. I was on one the other day on a Watergate Express bus that actually picked up over 40 people. On one of the large buses, I mean, there was, at that one stop, it filled up the entire bus, including standing room only, to the front of the bus. So it's very, very heavily utilized.
I guess it was the other way around. I'm recalling the conversation that they were complaining that it was just for commuters as opposed to people wanting to shop in the business improvement district.
Well, there's an active group trying to stop it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Ken could tell you more about that.
Yeah, and I guess I feel the same way, that we should do whatever it takes to ensure that all that service is going to continue. That's being
and one of the controversies was that the residents weren't paying at Watergate, and why should they have service out there?
Yeah.
But the PBID, when we talked about funding mechanisms at the task force that we had, most of the residents on the task force agreed that we should continue, and the legal analysis was that that when the PBID is reconstituted, it will include, I'm not 100% sure that it will, but it seems quite likely that it will include residents, so.
Well, it seems like the law had changed.
Yeah.
since
Well, the way it's been interpreted has apparently changed, and a lot of places, some places are including residents. And so Watergate would probably be paying at the rate that they proposed initially when they wanted it to be voluntary, about $160,000. So if they're paying $160,000 into it, they're going to want, the individual property owners would be, if they're going to want service, they're not going to want to have an AC Transit bus that goes out to Ashby, and the rest of the city has, has these other.
Maurice, can I comment on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, the way I understand it, what Diana explained to us is that these routes are new proposed routes that
Which
are
ones are you
being,
pointing to? Is it
well,
the AC
the map.
Transit?
I mean, these don't show all the existing routes, it's just showing the proposed routes, so.
AC Transit.
The proposed AC transit routes,
And
so.
those are not, we have one,
This,
are you showing the AC
well, I
transit
mean,
map?
you
No,
haven't,
you're showing
there
the
isn't an
different-
exhibit here that
That's
shows,
it.
there isn't an exhibit that you presented to us that shows all the Emery-go-round routes.
This is the
And
Emeryville route.
all, are these,
This is the Emeryville route.
but this is, but what they're proposing, what this map is supposed to be showing us are the routes that AC Transit's considering adding. These aren't showing what.
That's what
we're-
They
Separate
actually have
Is that correct?
26.
There's three
There
different
One,
maps.
one is
There's one
AC
map
Transit,
are 3 different maps.
and the others are ideas of circulation, but we don't know who or how it would be provided.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. It
Right,
is
but-
part of their scope to think about that, but they haven't done it yet.
Right, but it doesn't mean that you wouldn't still have your Emery-go-round routes that you have right now.
Right.
But we don't know that,
You
because
cannot
every
make
go-round
that
is,
assumption.
it's all in flux. I feel like these two groups need to merge, like the task force and the EBOTs should be talking to each other, not separately.
Right, and the thing is that all of the Emerygrounds are shown, but they're shown as existing, but as also proposed. So they're basically proposing to keep them. And what they're
In
saying
addition
is,
to all these routes. Is that what-
they're already on here. It's just that they're showing it as a proposed route, but they actually are existing routes. And that's my point, is that if the existing routes are shown as proposed routes, then this existing should be shown as a proposed route if in fact they're planning on keeping it.
But they're making, pardon me, they're making these statements without really being informed by the Emeryville round. And your point's well taken. Unless it's one thing for a consultant to make an assumption. That assumption is erroneous. They're not facing the fact that the Emeryville round is in some upheaval. Changes probably will be made, and they're not recognizing that. And the other problem that I have with the consultant is, it's only a 1.2 square mile town. To leave out the peninsula, which is 25% or so of the population, and hundreds of workers, which was the whole idea of the PBID in the first place, to get the workers from BART to Emeryville, not recognizing that and not demonstrating that on the map, I feel they have done a very sloppy job, quite frankly. And the other thing that I'm concerned with is these maps that are presented to us, as Betsy pointed out, on the one hand, you have proposed AC transit routes, and then right on there you have the Emeryville round, whose routes are now in existence, but may change. And it's confusing it.
But if you had Emery-go-round in addition to this, these routes wouldn't be feasible because people would get on the free bus, they wouldn't get on a AC transit route. I mean, that's the
Well,
reason.
I'll tell you
right?
what the staff told me, you don't mind my interrupting again, is that they said that, it'll be one or the other. It'll be the Emeryground or it will be AC Transit, or
Pretty
it could be some
sloppy.
other operator.
No.
That's what the staff of AC Transit said.
I think it was the consultant, people working for the consultant told me that. They told me that at several different maps when I got there and would discuss when I would get into the whole thing about the fact that, that this wasn't shown there. They'd say, oh, no, those are all going to be the same, and it's just that they may be operated by different things. Maybe AC Transit would run it, maybe the Emeryground would run, maybe the Emeryground would run this whole thing. And when they talk to me about the Emeryground running the whole thing, that's when I say, I don't really know that I want to vote for a PBID that might include 3 different
Exactly,
cities
exactly.
that might have just astronomical costs.
Well, I have to say that we did have a policy advisory committee meeting, and it had our mayor, representatives of the other 2 mayors, and some residents, and representatives of housing, and disabled groups, and people from all the boards of the transit agencies. So Greg Harper was there from AC Transit, and a couple other people, and Jeff Sears was there from the TMA. And they said a lot of things, but one of the things Jeff Sears said was, we'll run it there if they'll pay for it. So when you talk about the possibility of expanding the Emeryville route, that is given if it's possible for the other areas to come up with a deal that the Emeryville route feels is worthwhile. Otherwise, it wouldn't.
Right, but for us to be considering and voting on a P-bid for our 1.2 square miles, while they're talking about, oh, maybe we'll do all of Berkeley, we'll do all of Oakland in addition to that, and it will be all part of the same service. That really sort of changes the whole complexion of the whole thing and the possible exposure to
And
escalating
endangers the
costs.
P-bid.
And it really endangers, I think, the Emeryville service when you
Absolutely.
throw this whole,
Water down too much.
yeah, because I mean, you're going up to, I looked at some of them at different maps, and or some of the explanations of the different routes, and there were 6 or 7 BART stations that they're planning on servicing. Well, I don't see how they can afford to do that, and I sort of am uneasy about the Emeryville route, which has worked very well because it's a relatively discrete, area. So you can't run into too much trouble because it's a really small area. Well, you start branching out to, North Berkeley and West Oakland and Rockridge and all these other places.
And you become more like AC Transit.
It's sort of like a mini AC Transit.
Well,
like-
Yeah, so,
The other problem I have is that, this whole thing originated because of the concept of a trolley car line going from North Berkeley all the way down to the West Oakland BART station. And all of a sudden, the whole focus is on the connectors and not the main line. And I think the consultants and AC Transit are jumping ahead of themselves to introduce this complexity and not focus on the main line. That's where the big money is going to be. I don't think you're going to get a lot of support for more buses. I think if you present the main line, the idea of a very successful trolley car like Portland or Seattle, which once they put them in, the whole route blossoms.
Well, that plus a lot of other things.
Exactly. But I think this introducing possible routes is so complex and so off-putting that you're going to lose support because we're going to need a lot of support from the feds, from the state, and from Alameda County.
Well, I
So
have,
I'm very unhappy with the consultants. I don't think we have a document here that is workable or easily understandable by the people.
I would like to help you understand how we got from there to here. When we first started the study, one of the alternatives was a line that goes from North Berkeley to West Oakland Park. And the ridership projections were really low. Everybody on the technical advisory committee from the transit agencies and the cities said the 19 didn't fly. We tried this and we tried that, and we couldn't get a market for it.
was the 19 the bus that used to do that? That was
Yeah.
canceled?
Yeah. We just don't think that there's a market for it. We don't project the ridership, we don't have the history of people riding it.
You have a time frame, Diana, that is very truncated. This is probably going to be a 20-year project. And given the push on housing, and even though redevelopment's gone away, money is going to start flowing into housing again. And you're going to talk about a corridor that is extraordinarily dense. The San Pablo Avenue corridor, and if you put a streetcar line down, between San Pablo and the Bay, you're going to create that density. Emeryville has already done that. You're seeing glimmerings in West Oakland. It's a hard fight, I should say. But they're vision, it's truncated. You have to think in longer terms. This is not a quick and dirty, put on another bus route type
Well,
operation.
they did
It's
do-
a long-term
They did
operation.
do ridership projections based on the growth projections that ABAG put together, which in turn were based on the West Oakland specific plan and other plans. And they did not think that a route on 6/7 Hollis Mandela would gain that much ridership. Now, what has come up is people have said, well, if there's any place where we're ready to go from a bus to a streetcar, it's San Pablo Avenue. So, how does that sound?
Well, there's been so much community opposition in Oakland to gentrifying West Oakland that the city planning actually backed away from the big high-rise developments that were going to go along Mandela Parkway. And, you see the problems in San Francisco now with the lack of, the gentrification of older neighborhoods. And what it's doing in, Oakland hasn't done that. That doesn't solve a lot of problems, but it still is an issue that, we did a planning commission tour of affordable family housing, and we went out to Fruitvale. And going out there on International Boulevard, I realized that there's been no gentrification there, that all the neighborhoods are very low income. And, nothing much has changed. Now, I don't think putting a better transportation system in, it might go like San Francisco and become
That's where they're
more
getting BRT, that'll be interesting to see.
developed, but on the other hand,
Diana, did the consultants project what the ridership would be with a trolley car line down San Pablo from North Berkeley?
No.
How much extra would that cost us to get that information?
Well, we can certainly consider it as an option. I think that looking at the way routes evolve from standard bus to rapid bus to streetcar, that's just logically the next thing in line.
Well, about 10 or 15 years ago, Lonnie was all hot for
Right.
making the Grand Boulevard from San Pablo down to Oakland, San Pablo. And actually, given, pardon me, the medians along San Pablo Avenue, this is something that is a possibility. And so I, for one, would like to have ridership projections for a San Pablo Avenue fixed rail.
Can they
Not
put
just
in these
BRT.
studies how much new housing would have to be constructed?
Well, yeah, that's
along there
the
to
ADAG
support
stuff,
the,
yeah.
Well, we did that. I was very skeptical. I was like, do you think that the population that is expected to happen along here will support these? And they did the projections and they said yes. They did this graph that I wish it was in the workshop presentations, where they had the cost of streetcar and the ridership projections kind of graphed over each other. The only place where the thousands of riders starts to stick up above the millions of dollars for the tracks is in Emeryville, the routes that they designed for Emeryville. But they come pretty close in the other places.
But
that
Diana,
means
that's the whole
new
point.
development going up along the tracks to
Right.
support the track.
Yeah, if you drive down San Pablo now, even in Berkeley, you see that beginning of that dense housing
Oh,
along
yeah.
San Pablo Avenue.
Mhm.
It's going to happen in Oakland, from the City Hall up to 36th Street. There's just no doubt about it. But we should get the projections from the consultant.
I have a comment. I attended a couple of the EBOT meetings. I'm disappointed with the study. I mean, you just don't have people coming together. The questions are not good questions. And what kind of vehicle would you like to be in? I mean, some people have never been in a streetcar, so how are they even going to make that assumption? At the Transportation Commission, they were talking about funding on San Pablo Avenue where they're supposed to be putting platforms in, making a lot of capital improvements along that route. And I even heard something talk about buses opening up on both sides. So if that's what's going to happen, that needs to be factored into this also. you know, these maps that don't have routes on them, routes are there, then why should they be on the map? The F line isn't even on there at all, and that certainly is a local route as well as a Trans-Bay route. I don't think this study is doing what it was supposed to do, and it's just convoluted, and you have different crowds in different cities. I know I went to the one in West Berkeley, West Oakland, and there's a different group of people there, and I don't know, I just don't think this is a worthwhile study. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do
Well,
with
they've
it.
just lost their direction, you know.
But you see why they changed direction.
Say that again?
Do you see why they changed direction? They changed direction because they did ridership projections for the route that we had in our proposal, and it didn't pan out.
To me, what that says is they lost the long-term vision. They focused on statistics which may or may not, they're, in the first place, they're projections. They may or may not come true, as we've seen with many of these ag stuff. And to lose the focus of what was directed by what I thought was the city council's direction, and Oakland and Berkeley, this idea of a long-term project, and get muddled down in these ridiculous maps.
Well, the
We're
other thing
we're going in the wrong direction.
The other thing I want to say is, the proposal we made to the FTA had a line going north-south, and it also had lines going to the BART stations. And the survey we did at the beginning, where we got 800 responses, most people wanted to go to the BART stations. So that's why these ideas are focused on the BART stations. So if you say they're not doing a good job, it's because they did the research
but
and
let
they
me
proposed
again,
according to the research.
Diana, reiterate what I'm talking about is that the connectors come after the main line.
Mhm.
And the connectors, especially because they're bus connectors, are relatively easy to adapt. If you put a segment in there, you can adapt. To say 20 years ahead of time, AC Transit is going to run these kind of routes, to me is ridiculous.
Well,
The
something
focus should be on the main line. Otherwise, you're going to lose the support of the people. They're going to get involved in these maps and say, whoa. And like Betsy says, Emeryville, who really wants to be a part of this, we don't want our P-bid sucked into some giant monster AC Transit clone.
So if this streetcar line were to happen, going from North Berkeley to West Oakland BART, then we'd have to start thinking about who would run such a thing. And it doesn't sound like the city's thinking, I don't know if it's up to the city, or the TMA is thinking that it would be the TMA, or an expanded TMA,
That comes after, once you figure out what it's
The
needed.
streetcar?
once you figure out what it is.
Did we ever think about a private-public partnership? Because in the old days, private people owned the streetcars. And with only a nickel a ride. You guys don't know that.
When they talked about the streetcars initially, it was coming through
Right,
Emeryville,
right,
and they
right.
had talked to the TMA. Well, it was before, it was when Wendy Silvani was still involved.
Yeah.
And they had asked them, would they be willing to run it? And that's when I think first the peninsula got dropped off. And that's because
Right.
John Sherman said that when they were designing it, that it wasn't practical to run the streetcar all the way out there. And so when they had talked to the Emeryville people about running the streetcar, they would then have buses, the Emeryville buses would continue out but then it sort of now it's morphed into something totally different.
Jennifer, what do you think?
Well, you see, I feel like we do have a little bit of a cart before the horse. Like, I would like to understand what would be, and maybe it's the ridership projections that you're talking about, and I don't understand well enough how those are done. You know, that's kind of the black box to me is,
I can tell you in just a couple sentences.
okay.
The ridership projections are based on the Plan Bay area countywide growth projections, which are pretty close to the general plans and the West Oakland specific plan. And I was asking, we had Bay Area Economics do a big report, and I said, do you think that West Oakland will grow as they hope to? And they cited several reasons why they thought, yes, they would.
But even if it grows, and even if Emeryville increases by 60%, as we've projected, it's not enough, households, not enough density to support what we're talking about. That's what the ridership
Didn't, I think that the lack of demand for the north-south, is that what you're asking for?
Yeah.
Is based largely on the questionnaire. There weren't very many people that said they wanted to go north-south. And I have to be honest, it's also AC's Transit's experience with the 19.
Right.
That they could not get a market for it. So, and that's historical.
Yeah.
So if, maybe you're right, maybe if the projected growth in West Oakland happens, that there would be a demand that AC Transit just can't see, because
Yeah.
they had that bad experience.
I feel like there is something missing like that. You know, the number of people I hear about who take Emeryville around to MacArthur to get to San Francisco, but don't consider the F bus or something. I feel like there's a block sometimes that people don't necessarily know if things were in place and it was efficient, that they might find other routes that were better. And I guess that's where I had hoped that a consultant would be able to use their expertise to include Watergate, because clearly that's a huge part of Emeryville, but also to see a vision, something that would be more lasting than just bus connector routes as well. That was the hope, and the fact that that didn't come is somewhat disappointing, and it's not clear if that's because they're doing really good work and it's not feasible. And we don't want to hear that because we didn't know.
Right, I think that's partly what's happening.
Or there is something missing. I think basing it on just the community input is a little bit misguided, because I think there are certain people who answer, it's just not scientific in terms of what kind of sample we're getting there. And there's one other thing I want to bring up, which I haven't heard anyone talk about, and maybe it's a third rail, we don't talk about this, but there is a railroad that goes right through this entire area, and it goes from West Berkeley down through West Oakland, through Emeryville. I know it's owned by freight lines, but has anyone in all of this discussion talked about using that right-of-way?
Yes, someone has.
Okay.
AC Transit is doing, not AC Transit, BART. BART is doing a study called something Vision, Metro Vision. And as part of that study, they're investigating the idea of putting DMU, diesel multiple unit service, on the railroad tracks from Richmond to, is it West Oakland? Not Jackalonis, but West Oakland BART, I think it was.
Yeah, it
I
doesn't
think
quite
taking
connect
into
with-
consideration that there's 40 trains a day going through Emeryville.
Yeah, somebody asked this at a planning commission meeting, and Charlie had the answer, see if I can remember it. There are more width, not more tracks, see if you remember right. There's more width in that corridor than the railroad needs for the lines, for the freight trains that it runs. And it is possible to add passenger service that, I think this is there, I'm not the expert.
Well,
Passenger service that doesn't get tangled up in the freight trains.
There's right-of-way for 4 tracks,
Yeah.
and 2 of the tracks have been removed over the years. So there's the width there, particularly in Berkeley.
Anyway, I feel like, when we're talking about right-of-way and trying to establish and capital costs, et cetera, that shouldn't be ignored, at least as a possibility. I'm glad to hear that Bart's setting that. I haven't heard more about that. Has that been folded into this study? It seems like that would, it should be, right? It definitely impacts the same
Well,
areas.
absolutely. If this is a serious consideration by BART, these consultants should
Know that.
be aware of the fact that we're focusing on the same area, and there's several different efforts to improve the transportation to act as a reliever for I-80. And for them not to bring forward this idea of the BART or find out, where the BART's going, we're not getting a comprehensive response from these guys.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I just want the Emery-Go-Round discussion to be part of this, not separate from it, and an assumption that it's based on.
And I definitely would ask that we bring in some consideration of what kind of efforts BART's making with the railroad tracks. That'd be great for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Finally.
In terms of funding, I don't have Well, I want to go back to the mode comparison. I agree that I think that there's kind of a progression that happens, and I assume this enhanced bus is similar to BRT, Bus Rapid Transit?
Yeah, it's, some people call it BRT light. The most important part of BRT is the dedicated lane.
Right.
So it's
And this does not
BRT
include
without the dedicated lane.
Okay. I think as much as people are resistant to the dedicated lanes in this country, it shows internationally that that's the key thing, is to have no congestion so that it moves more quickly than traffic. And we're not getting that because folks don't want to give up a lane here to traffic. So International Boulevard is moving forward on BRT, and it'll still be a few years, and I know San Jose's broken ground on their first BRT just in March. So hopefully we'll have some examples, but it does take a lot of time and planning. I know AC Transit and the City of Oakland have worked really hard on that. Some of my colleagues are involved in that. So BRT is also more expensive than the enhanced bus because of that dedicated lane idea. But internationally anyway, it is much better and much cheaper than a streetcar. That's what I understand.
Right. And one difference between a BRT or an enhanced bus and a streetcar, the streetcar provides a smoother ride by taking a longer time to start and stop. So if you're willing to get jerked around a little bit, the buses are actually a little bit faster than the streetcar, especially on a route that has a lot of stops.
What about the trolley bus, is that overhead wires bad, is that?
Oh, God.
Oh, in San Francisco, yeah. Are people putting those in new anymore? I don't know. My kids were asking when we saw them in San Francisco the other day, they're like, tell me about this, electronic buses.
They're always having to jump out of the bus, and, put the thing back on.
But also, when were those put in? I mean, those.
I moved out here in 1978, and I lived in San Francisco starting in '78 for a number of years, and they were there then, so.
Well, they were there after the Second World War.
Yeah, so it's for a
So
really
your
long
point is
time.
you don't think anybody's putting these in new?
Well, I don't know. I'm just curious. I haven't seen
I mean,
them.
Wires up in all
Washington DC is
underground
putting in
areas.
streetcars with overhead lines for the very first time in
Oh,
their
wow.
history.
Oh, wow. So it is
So-
going in. So when I look at this matrix, which compares, and I look at the third line, which is ridership, and I see that the new riders and total riders is not so significantly different. I mean, it goes up for sure as you go up to streetcar, but the cost of streetcar being, what is it?
1,200
Six.
million.
It's a
6
lot bigger, but it
times.
hasn't been annualized,
Uh-huh.
because it includes a capital expense that wouldn't be paid for the way the buses are.
Oh, so we should be comparing it annualized.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
can we have apples to apples here in terms
Right.
of looking at those costs, not the total costs? And how long would it last and what's expected? But the VMT drop is very significant,
Because based on comparing to other cities,
Right,
the streetcars are popular, they draw more riders.
right. So, but can you do a streetcar on these wiggly, as you call it, the sense routes? Or is the streetcar really reserved for a main corridor, which is what we're not seeing on here,
Oh.
example?
So it's not an assumption that these connector routes are
Would be
streetcars, for God's sake.
Right, so I'm saying, if we're considering streetcars, where would a streetcar go? How come we're not getting an example of, this is, if we were to do a streetcar, this is what it would look like. If you were doing a bus, this is what it would look like.
So if we had streetcars in some places, where would those places be?
Right,
Put it on the map.
put it on the map and help me to understand, because right now, it's too hard for me to put it together and try and understand what the vision includes.
Well, also, I think you need a map showing existing lines and
Yes.
proposed new lines.
Yes.
About that.
Right, and we need some kind of guarantee of what the proposed and new ones are. So I feel like this is a good conversation. I don't think we're at the end of the conversation. I still feel like we're at the beginning and middle of the
That's
conversation.
very early beginning.
Yeah, and, but I do hope that there's something practical that we can take away from this and that it informs certainly the TMA conversation about, and the AC Transit conversation. And, we have an AC
And
Transit.
the railroad.
And the railroad, Bart. We have an AC Transit Liaison Committee here, which hasn't met yet since I was elected 4.5 years ago, and I've asked for it to meet, because I feel like, maybe those conversations are happening and the council's not aware of it, but I guess they're working on it.
On the cost on this matrix here, I mean, it costs I don't think the AC Transit could operate a bus as efficiently as the Emeryville.
Right.
But so how do these costs compare, like who's running this? Because if you have Emeryville, I presume those are based on the cost, currently cost of the Emeryville to run it. But when you go to a conventional bus, do they inflate it for, because I don't think Emeryville would do conventional buses. We would,
Well, Emeryville is private and
Right.
AC Transit is public. So
right, so I think it's gonna have to be, you're gonna have to have costs associated with public or private.
But they also have a number of conventional buses now
Oh, yeah.
on
Okay.
the.
Right, so maybe it's not the type of bus.
The type of bus, but the
but who
operator.
the operator is.
Operating.
So Diana, what's your next step now?
Yeah.
You had a little pushback here.
This is why we do this step. This is
Yeah.
good. So next we come up with a draft. And we do not have a set of public meetings scheduled, but we do have, we'll be posting it and we'll be putting my email address for comments and we'll be bringing it to the policy, the TAC, the Technical Advisory Committee, the Policy Advisory Committee, this committee, the Planning Commission, the City Council, and as many as I can. I'm trying to get people to bring it to, we are taking it to the AC Transit Board in a couple of weeks. So we'll have a draft that hopefully folds in and responds to all these comments. We're going to be really going back to the drawing board and scratching our heads before we do this draft. So hopefully we'll get robust input on the draft before we do
I guess I have a question about the draft, because I, for one, hope when the draft comes out that it has more clarity and that the maps are refined. I think all the technical experts, as Betsy said, they are mostly the people that are coming to these public meetings.
Right.
And they're the ones that are involved in it. And they're talking to each other, but they don't understand the people we have to sell it to are out in the public. And so they're getting lost in technicalities. And so I hope when the draft comes back, it is refined and has clarity.
I'd also like to ask, you know, the regional, our county, our ACTC organization, I feel like needs to be aware of this and weigh in on this. It's a regional
They
transportation
do have
issue.
someone on the TAC.
They do.
But
And
it
does it
sounds
go
like
to
we need
that
to do
board as
more than
well?
that and really
Yeah.
fast.
I wonder about the electeds who serve on that and whether they get to hear about this. When you talk about who would run something like that, what's the agency that would take that over? I mean, I don't really know. We have different models all over the place in this region. It's pretty wacky with our transit agencies, but you know, some county commissions, like VTA, runs their transportation, and you know, if AC Transit doesn't do streetcars and we want a streetcar, who's going to do? You know, it doesn't have to be up to the Emery go round to step in and do a regional entity.
Oh, no, huh?
So there needs to be an understanding of some responsibility, I think, on a regional level as well. And I don't know how that gets born or how that works,
And
but
does Caltrans have a seat at these meetings?
Caltrans.
Especially
Well,
if we're going.
Caltrans is my grant manager.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and what about the railroads?
Very hard to get a hold of the
Capital Corridor.
railroads.
Capitol Corridor is sitting on it.
Capital Quarter, Jim Allison is on it.
Okay, good. All
All
right.
right.
And then lastly, I just want to say, you know, the Watergate residents who so strongly came and spoke in support of Emery Go Round, I want them to be weighing in on this too. I wish that if there's some way to
Here they are.
get, I know, but you guys have to trigger something.
One of the problems in this is that after having spent 2 hours at the meeting and hearing people talk about it, talking to consultants at each of the maps, reading the attachments that were in the agenda packet, I could not figure out what was going on. I literally
There
spent
you
several
go.
hours
So it's not
reading
accessible.
the staff report and studying all of the maps to see, well, what's the difference between this and that and the other thing, and why isn't this shown, and what is shown for, you know, the peninsula. And I am willing to do it because I think it's really, I've just
Yeah.
believed in public transportation for many, many years, and because I don't see anybody else getting involved in it. I really did want to go to the community meeting, but I
You
just
have our
thought.
gratitude, Betsy.
And then when I saw that Buzz and I were the only people who were there, I thought, And then I thought, trying to explain this to anybody at Watergate, when it took me hours to figure it out, it just is
Exactly.
not that. And you're trying to figure out, well, let's talk about the transportation in North Berkeley and West Oakland, and I thought, nobody's gonna wanna hear about that.
Right.
But if they're talking about it being an integrated thing, it's gonna, at some point, it might affect us.
Well, and if they
so-
see they're not on the map, that would definitely raise some eyebrows, I would think, too. And
We'd have
then
an
making sure we're
insurrection.
hearing from the employees in town, folks who do use transit to get here. When we do our surveys and get 800 responses, which is great, are we categorizing who those people are so that we know that we're hearing from all the
We
different
do,
groups?
we did.
Great.
Do you know who the respondents are? Because I don't remember.
We did ask the question. I don't know what the answer was.
Okay.
But we did send it to a bunch of employers as well as organizations.
But it also includes 3 cities, so the vast
Right.
majority of it includes people who are outside of
Well, I
Emeryville.
wouldn't say the vast majority, but yeah.
And the thing is that this all started through Emeryville, and it sort of is possibly going to affect our PBID and our upcoming, so that's, as I said.
It's up to the
like sort of
PBID what
thing.
it decides to do. Nothing's
Right.
gonna come in and take over the PBID.
But the implications from this study could impact our decisions around the PBID.
Yeah,
Right.
Right?
Right.
And what the need is, where the desire is, where the ridership is, and what we need to do to serve. Well, thanks for your work on this, and look forward to hearing the next iteration. Our last thing, I just put on here an update on the Love Our Neighborhood Day. I guess there's no one here to present on that, but I just want to be sure from staff's point of view, that this is moving forward in a timely way.
Did you get the traffic study?
I saw an email on it, I haven't had a chance to touch it.
But they sent it.
They did send it,
All
yeah.
right.
Okay.
How about you, Ken?
We're not getting any, I get emails, but my key staff who we've identified that they should be talking to aren't.
They're not getting the emails that,
They're not getting any emails, I'm getting some emails about meetings, and I'm trying to pass those on, but they have not contacted us. One of the meetings we had, we made it very clear that we'd like to know when they have established the route and all those things, and I'm assuming the route's been established, they just figure it out, we'll notify them.
Last
Well,
time-
Laura sent out an email with the traffic plan and CC'd a number of people, but because it was last week, I remember that that since I'm the only person in Public Works that I guess is the point person, they just sent it to me and then I sent it on. I don't know if Jeannie was the one that,
is Jeannie the person
Yeah,
that needs
Jeannie's
to
the
be
one,
included?
yeah.
I wonder if
She hasn't, I asked her
Okay.
last week, or the week before, if she had heard anything.
No, this was the end of last
Yeah,
week.
yeah, and she says she has not been getting anything, and she reiterated it last week.
Okay, well, I'll take a look at it.
If you can just close that loop and make sure, or send to Chris
We're-
or Laura.
We're
whoever
making the
needs
assumption
to-
that what they've presented is gonna go, and we're gonna be ready, so.
Yeah, well, they did ask for feedback. It sounded to me like
You
it wasn't.
forwarded it to me and Mike, you didn't forward it to the police yet. We just got it on last, at the end of the Friday.
Friday.
So
Right,
I could forward it right now. so
That would be
yeah.
Oh, there you
so
go.
helpful.
But
Thank
who
you.
are the other critical people you want to forward?
Don't just
to
forward it,
then?
tell them to add Jeannie's.
Jeannie.
Yeah,
Well,
Jeannie's,
if you could do that, if you could,
Jeannie's not on there on the original.
So
well,
put
the
Jeannie.
police need to review the traffic management.
Right, when I'm out, so nobody from the police department was on Laura's original message.
Except
Well,
that
No, I don't think so,
forwarded it.
I didn't get anything from
you,
Laura.
try and make sure that that happens, that would be great.
Yeah, no, actually, Laura sent it to Jean Kwan.
Oh, did she?
Yeah,
And that was on
No,
Friday or
Friday.
Thursday?
that was on Friday.
Then I'm wrong.
Great.
Maybe because I didn't see it.
That's okay. Well, it's on Friday.
You weren't copied on it.
No.
I'll just forward it to you.
No, that's fine.
Laura, they're all confused about who they should
Yeah.
email and be included.
Like I said, we're
But
just moving along as if it's gonna
Yeah.
happen where it's gonna happen, we'll be prepared for it.
but they are hoping to get feedback, so.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for closing the loop on that, and again, I just hope it moves forward in a smooth way. Thanks for all of your help and cooperation with that. Are there any staff comments? No? Any committee member comments?
Good discussion today.
Yeah, thank you for going in deep on that. With that, we adjourn. Thanks.